So my name is James Rutledge, and I live here in Central Kentucky. I'm an audio engineer, and I work at Southland Christian Church, and I'm on the Central production team there, and I've been there now for almost 27 years, so quite a while. But oversee audio on the Central team, and I float around campus to campus to all of our different locations and do training and repair, and then usually probably 3 out of the 4 weekends I'm mixing somewhere at one of our different campuses or training somebody or something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did James end up at Southland?
So kind of on and off. Went there when I was a kid. I've lived in Lexington most of my life, or Lexington and Nicholasville, except for we did a short stint in Mobile, Alabama. My family did. So it really wasn't until after we came back from there that I started getting involved in Southland. So that was probably my sophomore year of high school or something is when I started getting involved with the youth group there. The youth minister at the time, Brewster McLeod, was real key in getting me to come because when I was a kid, I was kind of like in the alternative crowd, and I thought all the kids that were at youth group were real cliquey, and I didn't really want to do anything with that. But he just kept on me all the time, and between him and my mom, basically just always on me to get me to come to youth group. And one of the things that he used to bait me into coming in was he's like, "Hey, I need some help doing production stuff. So would you be interested in doing that?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, I was always into tech stuff as a kid, into video games, obviously computers. I would like to build my own computers and stuff like that, but I didn't really know anything about like audio or anything that I would eventually do. But he kind of reined me in with that. So I started off doing that in like my sophomore, junior year of high school. I'd just sit in the back and I would push the faders, not really knowing what they were doing, but just, I could hear it. Okay, that's good, I guess. So I had to start from scratch there. A guy who was 1 year younger than me, he was also named James, James Dooley. He was mixing in the big service. He was doing the broadcast recording. We used to record the broadcast to tape, live to tape. So you'd be in there up in the balcony with an analog console mixing all the inputs to tape. And he had asked me, he's like, "Hey, would you want to learn how to do that?" And I was like, "That sounds like a lot of fun." So I went in with him and trained with him for a while. And so that was like 1996 or so, and 97. And then from there, I was just there all as much as I could be. Like I had graduated high school in 95, and I was going to UK in the computer science program at College of Engineering. But I was basically every free moment was out at church doing stuff, just because I thought it was fun and the way to serve God and also do fun stuff. Looking back now, the gear seems kind of silly now. What we used to have, I just had one campus and all analog gear, but you have to learn somewhere. So started there, and then so 98 or so, I guess it was 98, I was still going to UK, but my grades were kind of tanking. The College of Engineering, the computer science program at UK was awesome, but it was very it was very theory, CPU stuff, logic stuff, and I was just kind of disillusioned. I just wanted to make video games. I think all of us kids back in the day wanted to just program video games. So once I had gotten there, like some of the stuff was too easy for me, and so I skipped out, and then I skipped out too much, and then the stuff got too hard for me. So my grades tanked, and the college was like, "Hey, you've got to get your GPA up if you want to be able to stay here." I said, "Or you can take a 6-month break." So it was kind of like either or. And so I was like, "Well, gosh, I'm going to take the 6-month break." So I just took the 6-month break, intending to come back. But at the same time, a part-time position opened up at Southland. So I jumped on part-time in 98. Worked there until 2000, and it became full-time. And then I've been there since then, ever since. So
wow.
Pretty much doing audio stuff the whole way.
Wow. So how long has Southland been around, like roughly?
Like the church itself?
Yeah.
So we've been out there since 1981, but the church itself was founded in 56 by Wayne Smith, so
yeah.
For quite a while.
Yeah, so you've been with them for about, if you count in the youth stuff and like growing up there, like a good portion of the life of that church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool because I didn't plan it out this way, but I think God kind of planned it out this way. My family has a pretty good legacy going back to like old Southland days, because my mom's dad was really good friends with Wayne, and they shared jokes all the time. And back in the day when they were still over at Hillendale, my mom's dad used to, I'm sure multiple people did this, but he used to drive out to Brandon Road, the corner of Brandon and 68,
yeah.
He was like, Wayne, you need to build out here. He was one of the people that was for that. And back in the day, that was like kind of crazy to go build a church out in the middle of the country at the time. But when Brewster first came to be the youth minister, he was like an intern. He stayed at my grandmother's house. So there's a lot of tie-ins and stuff. So even though me as a kid didn't see it, that I would one day work there, it kind of made sense. It all kind of lined up. But
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So whenever you were in college studying computer science, and you went home and you're like, Mom, I think I'm going to go on staff at this church part-time, where they were maybe expecting you to go into engineering. What was that kind of like? Was that tough? Was that kind of a conversation?
Yeah, it was kind of like, I think so I'm not too much of a planner, and so I was always just the next day thing, and I never really thought about, okay, what am I really going to do with this later? Whereas, I was kind of weighing that back and forth, and I was like, I see it, almost immediate impact with everything I do, just volunteering even at church. Whereas, going to school and stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, later on that degree is going to be fruitful in something, which I don't know what it is I'm going to do, and I never really honestly even thought about how far down the road that would be or what I would end up doing with that. But so that's kind of when I was weighing the two. At the time, I was thinking more immediate and thinking, I could be of use here, and this is fun. And so I was like, I kind of deferred, even though my parents didn't exactly love that decision, but to do it that way. But.
Yeah, I have a similar type of story. I was studying engineering, and I was like, hey, Mom, I want to go into ministry, and it was like a whole thing. But yeah, that's awesome. So, like, as you've like gone through that, like even like going all the way back to like youth, are there like some moments where you've seen like God really like evident like in your life, like moving pieces, or like even looking back, you're like, yeah, God was moving some pieces there for me, and you saw like you see His hand? Are there any moments like through that up till now where you're kind of feeling that?
Yeah. So early on, I guess it wasn't too early on, I was still living at home, and I was working at Southland, and it was about the time that a lot of my friends had graduated and were going off into the workforce and doing stuff. And I just kept getting down on myself for whatever reason. I was like, oh, you didn't finish. I made the wrong choice. You can always change your path if you want to later in life. But at the time, I was just like, oh, I didn't finish. And I was just beating myself up about it all the time. And I remember I was sitting upstairs at our computer room at home, and it was strange, just like not an audible voice, but as much as a voice that I've ever heard God say. He said, you didn't need that for what I wanted you to do. And it was like, wait, that wasn't me. That wasn't my brother sitting over there. He's playing a video game over there. And so it kind of just took me back. And then really, even ever since then, it's like that was such a pivotal moment. Like when God was real, even something as inconsequential as just Him saying, hey, you're good. There's been moments when I've chased God back to that and said, hey, talk to me again, Yeah. I'd love to have some more vision, But yeah, so that kind of set me on my path, and that's always been something that I've been able to kind of reflect back on.
Yeah.
There was also a period in the kind of late 2000s where stuff was just not great at church in terms of just different stuff going on with personalities against each other and stuff like that. It wasn't like anything terrible, but it just made it hard to work week in and week out. And a lot of it was almost more of, I'm a big feeler, and it was when I would hear of other people getting discouraged or maybe that they were frustrated, I would kind of take that on, even though it wasn't always necessarily happening to me. And so I kind of just got disillusioned with our church in general and thought, well, I don't want to play around with this. If there's something else better out there at another church, I want to go find that. And so I had a friend that was out at a different church in Colorado, and I visited there multiple times. And I kind of had, starry eyes, just thinking, oh, they do it right. They're not being held back by any of this baggage that I feel like we're being held back. And I actually went out there, visited, talked to some of the guys there about potentially working there. And just like in a similar situation, it wasn't as much of an audible thing in this, but I just really felt Spirit was saying to me, and this is when I was driving out. I think I was driving like along the Front Range, and it was just beautiful Colorado, and I couldn't wait to maybe potentially be out there, but I felt like the Spirit was saying to me like, hey, I want you to see what I'm doing here. I'm going to do that back in Kentucky, and I want you to still be a part of that. And so it was kind of frustrating because I was like, no, I want to, I want to be out here in Colorado where where the mountains are. It's awesome. I still have to visit out there, but I don't have that draw. But I got to realizing that it was really a little bit more of just me wanting to be in a really pretty place, to be outdoors and stuff like that, and to be part of that what God was doing there. But since then, having been here, God has unpacked that, and a lot of the stuff that was negative back in the past was pushed away. God just took care of all that. And so even all these years later, I can still reflect back on those kind of darker times and be grateful. Sometimes our newer staff and stuff, it's like, oh, if something particular isn't going great for them, I'm like, hey, it could be worse. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to like everything, but it could always be worse.
Yeah, kind of the excitement of it. I think that's a very normal human expected behavior almost. Right. Is like something new, especially if it's bad where you're at. Like something new, you think that the grass is greener on the other side, but that's why that saying exists of like, oh, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, or like maybe you can bring the green grass back home. Like that's great. That's great. Yeah. So
and then over the years, just like I think all of us as audio engineers, obviously we love mixing. Like I love music. I love being in the moment, and when you know the console at the back of your hand and you can close your eyes, during music and just mix, and just take it all in. Like that's a ton of fun and that's awesome. But really some of the most impactful moments have been when I've been not on the console, sitting next to someone who's learned and hearing them and watching them do their thing. Yeah. Is like even more impactful because it's like, hey, I get to be a part of that. It's not because of me. It's not anything that I taught them necessarily, but that I was able to help them do their art and be used by God too. And so those are probably my overall favorite moments is when I'm not even doing anything, but when I'm just kind of like, wow, this is really cool. God did this. This person is, they got a great mix and it's awesome and the room's great and everything like that.
That's awesome. Why don't you share, I know about your role at Southland, but why don't you go ahead and just share a little bit more about your role, because I'm sure that's drastically changed through the years and where you're at now. Talk about that a little bit.
So back in the old days when we just had the one campus, it's kind of funny to think of it that way, but when we just had the one campus and we were pushing towards weekend services every week, my role was pretty much, audio tech stuff. I'm setting up every week for the services that are coming up that week. So I'm, setting up mics. I'm finding out what the stage is going to look like, who's going to be on what instruments and stuff like that. Patching it, coming to rehearsal. Back in the day we couldn't record it, so we just had to try to get a good mix while you're at the rehearsal and hope for the best on Sunday. And then so once we started adding more campuses, though, it got harder because you can't just clone yourself, so you got to figure out, okay, how do we do this? So initially, when we built our Lexington campus over off Richmond Road at the old Lexington Mall, when we launched that, they asked if I could go over there full time and just kind of be in there and make sure it was going to be good in terms of what people experienced the first time there. So 6 months before we actually opened it, so this would have been summer 2012 or so, I went over there full time and was just, even though we weren't having services or anything, we were just getting everything ready. We did a lot of stuff in-house, like all the children's rooms and stuff like that. We did all the tech for that in-house, so we did the install. So we were hanging speakers and running wires and stuff like that, terminating things, which that was fun because it was something totally different, and I didn't have the day in, day out as much anymore of kind of what we had done before. So I did that for probably, 5 years or so, and we ended up moving just like anywhere, you're always shifting stuff around, let's do this a new way, and let's shuffle these people over here and have them do this. I don't really have any problem with that at all. I kind of enjoy change, honestly, which is kind of weird. A lot of people don't like change, but for me, it's like, hey, if there's a better way to do this, let's chase that. I don't care that I've been doing it this way for all this time, especially if I know the intent behind it, which it helps if you know the intent, because if you don't know the intent, it's easy to get kind of worried about, okay, where am I going to end up in all this, or what's the real what's the real thing driving behind this. But so we ended up shifting things around and moving to having a central team. And so now it's the same, now it's how it is now. So we've got a central production team that supports all the different campuses, and we're kind of housed at the Nicholasville campus in Nicholasville off of Harrisburg Road there. And so on that team, we've got our production director, Andrew Baker, and then we got a video guy, a lighting guy, and an audio guy. And so I serve the audio on that. And I will travel campus to campus just based on where the needs are or what's going on. We recently moved our Richmond campus into a permanent facility, so we'd spend a lot of time there getting stuff ready. And it's not nearly as hard as it used to be because now we have really good integrators that help with all that, so you don't have to do as much yourself. But yeah, so week to week I'm going around wherever I need to be training people. I also do all of our post audio editing for video. So anytime that we do a video in-house, the creative team usually will shoot that over to me real quick. Once they've done their final edit, they'll just shoot it to me, and I'll go through and tweak the audio however it needs to be. I'll do noise reductions, videos like this where it's talking head or something. Sometimes they might film it like in traffic or something. You try to take some of the traffic sounds out. But so I do that a lot, which is fun too. Kind of changes stuff up. I do the audio for most of our podcasts, so that's another thing that's different. That's kind of fun. Right now we just have the men's podcast, but we're drumming up some different ones to bring back. But so week to week, it's kind of all just audio stuff. My weekly schedule is usually starts with Sunday. That's obviously the big day, and I'm usually somewhere at some campus mixing or training or just kind of putting out fires or whatever he's doing. Each of the campuses have a production person that can schedule me as needed, so they can say, hey, James, can you be here this week or whatever? So I'll do that. And then during the week, we have all of our meetings on Mondays, and then Tuesdays, Wednesdays is getting ready. That's a lot of times when I'm doing podcasts or audio editing for stuff that's that coming weekend. Thursday morning, we go through and walk through the whole service, make sure everything's good. And then Thursday afternoon is when we might do like more emails and paperwork and stuff. Once we're done on Thursday morning, we kind of seal off anything for the weekend. So, hey, we're not going to mess with any systems or mess with anything. So basically, that when you come in Sunday, it's going to work. And then Friday, Saturday is our days off usually. So that's kind of my usual
That's awesome.
week.
So started out as a youth volunteer, now in charge of all audio across like 5 campuses. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just always found somebody who knew more than me and asked lots of questions. The guy who was the first production director we had back in the day, Kenny Vines, he had audio experience from Disney World in Florida and the Carpenter's Church down in Florida, and had done some touring stuff too. So he was just a audio wizard guy. And so as a kid, I just hung out with him all the time and was probably pestering him, but asking him lots of questions. And then I remember like sometimes during the message time when bro, whoever be up there teaching, I'd be laying down behind the console reading like Mix magazine or something, the front of house audio magazine, just, wouldn't it be cool if we had this gear? Because back in the day, it was all outboard gear. So like you might have, we got 4 compressors, 4 inputs, so we're going to put them on this week, So you couldn't just pick and choose like you can now with digital consoles and go in and make, stuff on every channel if you want. But
yeah, everything's so much more just robust and clean and good.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So now you're doing that. So let's back up to kind of looking at the whole like timeline of like your life. Like what have been some moments where you're like, where your faith has been like challenged, like where you've kind of had to really navigate different things going on?
Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian home, and so like I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. I never really knew life without God and without Jesus. I definitely had a moment when I was 7 years old. I think I was 7. We were living in Alabama, and I specifically prayed to God, and I was like, "Hey, I believe in you." Did the whole Jesus into my heart thing.
Yeah.
But I wasn't baptized until later. I think the church we were at the time they obviously believed in baptism, but it wasn't like okay, you believe, let's get you baptized kind of thing. So I wasn't actually baptized until I was a senior in high school. There was a senior trip, and it was kind of a smaller group of seniors. So not like the full high school trip, but like a senior trip. And one of the stipulations to be on that was you had to be baptized believers. So I was like, well, shoot, I need to get her done. So I was scheduling time with Brewster. And he's like, what took you so long? I was like, oh, I don't have any good reason. It's just, so we did that, got baptized. But yeah, all through my life as a young kid and stuff, I'd always had my faith and stuff. And it was kind of weird because I did go to a private Christian school when I was in Alabama. So from like second grade to end of fifth grade, I guess, I was in a private Christian school, and you're so sheltered in that environment that you almost kind of forget that other people don't believe what you believe, and for better or for worse. I don't know that I would necessarily do that again if it was up to me, but there was a lot of good experiences there too. But then from sixth grade on, I was in public school, and I kind of had a little bit of culture shock coming out of that. I was like, wait, people cuss? Like, this is real, Culture shock coming out of there. So sixth grade, I also went to a whole bunch of different schools, which didn't help. Sixth grade, I went to Clays Mill Elementary. And then seventh grade, I went to Morton Junior High, because that was the year when they switched between junior high and middle school. And when I got in junior high school, I was just like, forget all this stuff. I'm gonna rebel against all this and be a bad kid. I think I skipped like 2 weeks of class or something like that. just getting in trouble, what I thought was trouble. I wasn't really that bad, but just kind of rebel on. And then in eighth grade, moved again schools, went to Tates Creek Middle School, and I met some really key friends there in that grade that were kind of like, hey, we know you can be better than this, so let's all, they had gone through similar stuff in junior high just because it was such a crazy time. They're like, let's all band together and let's get better at our lives, basically, which is kind of weird for a middle school kid to say. But I had two friends, one was Casey and one was named Kong. He was Chinese, and we just would kind of band together and kind of decided to get better, because we had been so bad in seventh grade that they had put us like in the worst, lowest remedial classes. And my Chinese friend was like, we're better than this, we can do this. We ended up getting better grades, and we were friends all through high school, the three of us. So it was good times. But yeah, moving on further in life, I never really had any big relationships or anything, and I kind of hit my 30s and was like getting a little bit despondent about that, just because it was probably a combination of not really putting myself out there, but also just being, self sensitive about stuff and not believing in myself, which was probably a part of it too. But I think I was like 30 or 31, and I kind of just confronted God, and I was like, hey, I really would like to have a spouse, I would like to meet somebody, but I did say, I said, well, if it's just going to be you and me, okay, I won't say I'm fine with that, but I'll be okay with that. And it wasn't too long after that, and I actually did meet somebody, which was pretty cool. Like, that all works out. It was like I had to finally give up in order to be worth pursuing, almost, in a way. So it was the summer of 2008. I was working at church, obviously, and there was one of the vocalists. She was a newer vocalist who had come in, and her sister was actually on staff with us. Amanda was on staff on the worship team. But her name was Lauren, and she had moved up from Louisiana to kind of escape some bad relationships and stuff down there. And so she was kind of healing and had come here to just kind of start fresh, start new. And of course, I was on the backside, I was on the console, and she was singing, so it was kind of that, I was like, I got to like watch and listen to her. I was like, man, she's really good. She's really pretty. And so I had a crush on her pretty early on, but I didn't do anything about it. And then as we just spent a lot of time together and stuff like that, but we never really dated or anything, but we spent a lot of time together at church and different things. She eventually ended up having to be the one to ask me out. So she called me, it was December 20, our first date was December 23rd, 2008. We went to Pacini's over off Boston Road.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be at 12:30, but I was late, so it was like 12:45, because I'm always late. Anybody who knows me says James is always late. But so I was late. She was working at UK Federal Credit Union at the time, so she was a loan officer, doing all that. I had thought like there was no way I wouldn't have a chance with her initially because she's like complete opposite of me. She's super extroverted, life of the party, you know, always making sure everybody is good, and I'm like quiet observer, you know. But I guess the opposite's attracted in that situation. So, but yeah, we had our first date. We just hit it off. I think I walked out of our restaurant like, all right, we're getting married and we're gonna name our kids, you know. I was just like sold. But we dated a few more times and just over the course of the winter there. And then started getting more serious January, February. And then I was, you know, thinking, I was like, okay, I think this is the thing. And it was kind of interesting because even when we were dating, we had a lot of conversations that people don't necessarily have until a lot later in life. Like we talked about money super early on. We talked about like, you know, family and stuff early on. I think she'd asked me at one point, like, you know, do you want kids? And I was like, oh yeah. And she's like, well, how many do you want? I said, well, 2, because that's what I know. Like I have one brother, younger brother, so that's what I know. She's like, well, I want 4. And I was like, okay. So let's do 3 and then adopt 1. So yeah. There's that. But we got along great, and she had been in a pretty bad relationship before. She'd actually been married before and had gotten divorced and had come out of that a few years prior to that. And when I knew I wanted to ask her to marry me, and I knew I wanted to ask her dad, which at the time he was living in Florida. And I really wanted when I asked him, like I didn't want to just be, you know, another guy asking his daughter, you know, for his daughter. I knew she had been through a lot, so I wanted to get to know him. So I actually went down and visited him for a weekend, and we went fishing together and just kind of, I just didn't want it just to be this random guy coming in and asking for his daughter's hand. But I ended up asking him. Finally, we were on a family Disney trip for a wedding for somebody else that was getting married. One of our friends was getting married in Disney World. And we were down there at the wedding, and I asked her dad. I finally had to corner him before we left. I said, hey, you know, I'd like to marry your daughter. And he just said, do you love her? And I said, yeah. That kind of blew me away because I thought he was going to have 30 questions or something like that. But he could see that the feelings were mutual and evident. So ended up proposing to her on May 29th, 2009. She lived in a condo over off of Harrisburg Road, so proposed to her there. And then we thought it would be cool because we got married on December 20, we started dating on December 23rd, so we thought it'd be cool to get married on a 23rd, like sometime. So we were like, well, when could everybody come from church and stuff? We probably couldn't do it unless it was on like, I can't remember. We had Saturday services at the time, so I think we were like, it's got to be on a Friday or something like that. So we ended up doing it on October 23rd of 2009 was when we got married. So we ended up getting married out Talon Winery in Lexington. It was awesome. Mike Vandermark and his band were the band for it. And we had a great night with everybody, and our honeymoon was up in Whistler, British Columbia, so Vancouver. So we flew up there the next day, spent a week there, came back and just kind of hopped right into, you know, married life. We had a couple friends who we were doing stuff with, so we were just kind of getting started and all that. And so prefacing this a little bit, Lauren had some health issues leading up to this, and we weren't really sure what it was. And it was kind of around the same time that the H1N1 flu thing was, and so it was a lot of discrepancy about what it was. But there were different symptoms and stuff. But she had a lot of swelling in her legs and stuff like that, and she was overweight, you know, same as me. But she would be she'd be working, sitting down a lot, and so just not always up and moving as much. And I remember saying at some point early on, I was like, oh, I hope it's not a blood clot, you know, we need to get you up and moving, you know, figure that out. But we kind of just moved on with life and kept on going. And we'd come back, it was November 11th of 2009, and it was just kind of a normal day. She was going to go into work a little earlier than me, and when she got up and went to the bathroom, I heard her collapse, and I was like, oh, you know, crap. So I went in there, and she had passed out, and like hit her tooth and stuff on the ground and stuff. So there's a lot of blood, but we weren't really sure what was going on. She came to, and she's freaking out. And of course I'm freaking out. So she says, call 911. And obviously I said, I'm going to call 911. So I called the ambulance in. And the whole time, typical to her, she's like telling them to hurry up. She's like, tell them to hurry up, tell them to hurry up. So we're in there, and she passes out a couple more times. Like she will pass out and then come to, pass out and come to. And I'm talking to the dispatcher, obviously. And obviously they're trying to keep the line open. And eventually the paramedics get there. And the last time she passed out in the bathroom, I was in there, and the fireman said, hey, I need you to go outside and wave down people. Like, we've got more fire trucks and more police coming. So I said, okay. So I ran out there. I think I just had like boxers on or something. And I ran out there, and I'm like, okay, I'll do what I'm just in shock, so I'm just doing whatever they tell me. They package her up, and they're going to take her to the ER, and they say, hey, we just need you to know we're taking her to Jessamine County ER over here off 169. We lived in Nicholasville at the time. And they said, we need you to know she's not breathing right now. And so I was just like, I was totally kind of just in fix-it mode. So I was just thinking, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? So I knew I needed to call her sister. So I think I ended up texting her sister. I said, hey, she's not breathing. And then told her where we were going. So I got like her stuff together, put it in the car, and I followed the ambulance over there. And it was kind of weird on the way over there. Obviously I was, driving fast and stuff, but I was kind of calm, and I just felt, for some reason, I felt the need to pray that, like, God, I trust you with her, and if it's your will, just totally heal her of this, whatever it is. But I even said, if it's not, I trust you. And so I get in there to the ER, and they see me, and they kind of had a funny look on their face. So they pulled me into the side room, and they said, hey, I said, hey, they just brought my wife in. They said, hey, we want to pull you into the side room, not because of anything terrible, but just we want you to not have to wait out there. So I said, okay. So I went in there in the side room, and it was a long time. And I thought, well, surely they're going to update us. And during that time, her sister Amanda had gotten there. So we were just kind of sitting in there waiting to find out what would happen. And then the doctor came in, the ER doctor came in, and it was somebody from Southland that we recognized, Dr. Guerin. And he had said, well, tell me what happened this morning. And so I thought, oh, she must be all right. They've got her stabilized. So I just kind of went into robot mode, just trying to rattle off every little detail that I could to see if there might be something that would help him diagnose what was wrong with her. And after I kind of got to a stopping point, I was kind of like, okay. And he looked at us and said, well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we worked on her for an hour, but she's passed away. Couldn't get her heart to start again. And so obviously in that moment, you don't believe it's real, or, I remember, I think I just fell onto Amanda or something, but just it was just a blur. I mean, I remember, dozens of, my parents, because they were in town, I remember seeing them outside the room come in, and I remember just dozens and dozens and dozens of people, friends from church and coworkers and stuff came in, and, we got a chance to say goodbye to her there in the room, in her room there. And the next few weeks are just a blur. That we had the funeral, and John and Brewster had done our wedding, and then John and Brewster did our funeral. And they both said they'd never done anything like that, obviously, but it was 19 days. So 19 days after the wedding is when she passed away. And for the next couple of months, life was just a blur. You go through all the different stages of grief and stuff, but I think for some reason the thing that really hurt me the most was that all the stuff that we had said to each other, all the conversations we'd had, all the plans we had told each other about, like, no one was left who knew any of that except me. But I was like, that doesn't matter. I was like, it was just so hard. to be in that spot. And anybody who's lost someone knows that, there's nothing you can do, and you blame yourself. I thought with all these medical issues leading up to our wedding, like I should have noticed more, we should have chased more things. But even the coroner at the time said, when he came in the hospital room, he said, a 28-year-old woman doesn't just drop dead like this. It's almost got to be a blood clot. And so they ended up doing a medical exam, and they found out she had a lot of blood clots. So it probably, even if in the moment, if they had figured something out, it might not necessarily been able to solve it. But you just, and especially as a guy going back, you're like, oh, I should have seen the signs. We should have gotten healthy together. Like, what would have? But there's nothing you can do. And just like when you lose somebody from anything else, it's like there's nothing you can do. It's like it's not your fault, but you still bring it on yourself a lot. During those first few weeks, I stayed back at my parents' house, and I had a buddy, Jeff, who just came over to the house and would just sit with me. And I didn't talk, he didn't talk, but just to have someone there meant the world. I'm so thankful for him being there for me in that time. So I tell that to people now. If there's somebody if you have a close friend who goes through anything like this, whether it be loss of a parent or a spouse or anything like that, just, you don't have to say anything, but just being there is going to be huge for them. It was probably about, 3 or 4 months of just getting through life and stuff, and then all of a sudden you realize, you start to smile again, and you start to be excited about things again. The funeral was really special. We went and did a second funeral down in West Monroe for her family that lived down there that couldn't come up. I remember too feeling really guilty in the moment when Amanda had to call her dad and say Lauren didn't make it. I remember thinking to myself, I was like, the last time he saw her was at the wedding, and she was entrusted to me, and now she passed away. And that was just the enemy was creeping down on me and saying, it's your fault or something like this. But obviously he didn't feel that way. And we had some really special time over at Amanda's house with her parents, and where we just sat around and shared memories of Lauren and memories of our time together. So that was really good, even in the pain to have that. But
are you still close with them?
What's that?
Are you still close with them?
Yeah. Stay closer with her mom, with Brenda. We over the years, we kind of grieved at different paces. I tend to be kind of blah with my emotions. I'm very put it out there a lot, and I think maybe initially early on, I probably over grieved, at least on social media and stuff. And so I felt kind of bad because I knew Lauren obviously for about a year, and we were married, and obviously that's huge. But her sister and parents knew her for all of the 28 years that she was alive, and so it's just it can be interesting. So yeah, we're not super close, but usually every year, on Lauren's birthday, I'll text her mom and a heart or something, and then on our anniversary, her mom will text me, and it's just kind of a shared, it's not a current pain, but it is a current pain, but it's not as raw as it was. So we're just kind of a shared understanding kind of thing.
Yeah.
And coming out of that, I just felt like there was a moment, I think about 6 months afterwards, where obviously I was still grieving and stuff, but about 6 months afterwards, it's like God shared to me a little bit and was like, hey, you're hurting and that's good, but this wasn't about you. You got to partner with me in restoring her, because she had been through this really bad situation before, and now she's healed, and then now she's with me, and she's not there with you, but you'll be all right. So that was another moment when God was like, that's not how I should have felt. I should have probably just been mad at God for the rest of my life and just, whatever. But from that point on, I've been like, okay, this was part of my story. It was part of her story, and I get to share that, and nothing that'll never go away. And it's kind of like a part of you's been cut off, and you'll always kind of have that phantom pain there, but it's not going to be like, it's not the end. Like, there's other stuff out there. I haven't dated anybody since then. I've been open to it, but it's not been any situations that have felt right. I think it would obviously have to be someone pretty special, but definitely open to it.
Yeah, man. James, thanks for sharing that. That's like, sometimes there's just not words to like describe like things that people have gone through. Like, bad doesn't necessarily like do it justice. You know what I mean? Yeah. So where's James at like now? Like after that, I guess 20 years, give or take, from that. Like, where's James at now?
I think just being able to still be used by God and be like, none of that's ever changed. It's like I had this really awesome time, really short time with a really special person along the way. But it's like I think Paul said, when you're not married, you can give yourself more fully to what God's doing. And I don't think that you have, it's not saying that I don't think it's necessarily really better to be single or whatever, but just focus on daily life and, supporting my parents, my brother. My parents are getting older, as all of ours are, and so you start to think about them and what you can do for them. And in terms of work, it's still really fulfilling. Like, there's always something new to do, and I think one of the cool things about the team that I work with is there is a lot of longevity. Like Mike Vandermark on our team's been there as long as me. We both started in '98. He started in July, and I started in September. So, but even beyond that, there's been a lot of people with a lot of longevity, and that's not to say if you hop around jobs, that's fine too. It's whatever is right for you in the moment. Only you know that. So, but I've still been able to still be effective and still be used, and so there's always that to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, James, as we close, we do this thing. We've done it a couple times. I really like it. Other people might think it's corny or weird, but I asked the question of like, okay, James, if you had the moment to like talk to yourself, either like briefly after like your wife passed away, or even like in youth group whenever you were figuring out like that audio was maybe a passion of yours. Like, if you had a moment to like sit down and talk to that person, like what would you say to them?
Yeah. I'd say in both situations, just trust God and trust that He has good for you. Like, it's hard to say that in the moment after you lose your spouse, you just married them. And I don't know that you could just straight up say that, but if you could really lean into that, if I could lean into my younger self, if I could lean into myself after losing Lauren, or say there's still hope, there's still life to be lived. She would want you to continue on, and like she totally would. She would kick my butt if I was not, doing whatever. So I knew that. And then to myself as a young kid, like, being disillusioned with school or going into the workforce, whether it be doing something in ministry or not, it's just like, hey, God's got a good story for you to write. You get to, he and you get to team up to write the story wherever it's going to be. So, like, what's going to be the better story? Like, I could have gone on and done computer stuff and it probably would have been fine, and I probably could have maybe influenced people, with my faith and stuff, doing that too. But I think from what I've been able to do from making that choice has been a better story, I think, than maybe what I would have done if I just stayed in the workforce and done that. So.
Yeah. Well, James, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do sometimes, to share and be vulnerable, but I really do appreciate you sharing. So,
it's great to share my story. So.
yeah. Thanks.